Thank you. The gentlelady from Iowa, Ms. Hinson, is recognized for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Cuellar. Thank you, Director Easterly, for coming before us. It's great to work with you and great to see you again. And I want to actually follow up on some things my colleague, Ms. Underwood, was just talking about. When you came before the China Select Committee recently, you detailed some of the very, very heightened threats that we are facing. And I know we had a chance to talk about this. You said new threats are being uncovered every single day. We know that China and our other adversaries are continually trying to infiltrate our critical infrastructure. And really, it is about sowing that chaos, right, and creating that dysfunction. So we need to be proactive in our efforts to counter those malicious attacks from China and our other bad actors. So I appreciate your efforts to specifically take on Volt Typhoon. We know what a devastating attack that has been. You mentioned in your opening statement some of the capabilities, specifically the three that you are leveraging to really go after these threats: attack, surface managerial service, the Cyber Sentry platform, and critical infrastructure shared services pilot. So can you maybe detail a little bit more specifically on the attack surface management service, how that is really helping enhance security and resilience across the board for critical infrastructure?
Yeah, thanks so much for asking. It's one of the most important new services that we've put into play over the last couple of years. And just to break it down when we talk about attack surface management. So at the end of the day, the critical infrastructure that we rely upon is inherently vulnerable. So you have glitches in code, you have openings and flaws and defects in the technology base that allows threat actors to go in there and deploy malware or to get in and steal credentials so they can take over a network. So what our capabilities do are they scan for these defects, these vulnerabilities that are exposed, in particular, if we know those vulnerabilities are being used by nation-state actors or cyber criminals. And when we can see those open vulnerabilities, we then notify that organization, you have an exposed or unpatched vulnerability, and this is what you need to do immediately to get it patched. As I mentioned,
Does it usually take someone having an experience that's bad for you to realize that there's a vulnerability there, or do you have AI? I mean, what are you using to determine those vulnerabilities?
we use various commercial capabilities to scan for those open vulnerabilities. Typically, we try to get to them before harm occurs. That's how we're using our pre-ransomware notification initiative. We've done that 2,054 times since we launched that program, and we are preventing organizations from getting attacked by ransomware. And I've seen a lot of those feedback notes that say, thanks so much for notifying us so that we didn't get attacked. And so it's all about managing that vulnerability surface to drive down the propensity for attacks.
How do you work across these platforms and these three specific to coordinate your hunting operations and teams? How does that kind of play into that?
Yeah, thanks for asking. We haven't talked a lot about the hunt teams, but it's one of the truly world-class capabilities that CISA has. And we've been able to build that based on the budget that you've given us and the new authorities that we've gotten since 2021. And essentially, these are experts that can go on working with critical infrastructure, and they go on a network and they can look for and find evidence of intrusions. And that's where we found these Chinese Volt Typhoon actors. And so we've been hunting with our critical infrastructure owners and operators pretty deliberately since the Volt Typhoon threat was discovered. Frankly, as I said, it is the tip of the iceberg, but just in 23, 97 hunting engagements that have allowed us to drive down risk. And what we do is we use those hunting engagements, then we share what we know with our partners, both in industry, but across the federal government. And then we do advisories, which can be used by the IT and security teams so they can get ahead of the threat.
Are you doing that proactively, or you have partners who are coming to you saying, I'm opening up my systems, take a look? I mean, how does that relationship develop?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. Typically, we will see that there's some sort of a vulnerability, and we will reach out to that critical infrastructure owner or operator, tell them that we believe there may be intrusions, and then we will work with them to help remediate, to find them and remediate. So we try and be as proactive as possible because, frankly, I think that's the only way we can get ahead of this very complex and dynamic threat environment.
Yeah. Well, and I know my colleague mentioned the hack that happened, or I think maybe you mentioned it with the the Commerce Secretary is being intruded upon, and I think another agency as well. So obviously that is a huge concern in being proactive to go after those threats. And then I have very little time left, but could you elaborate a little bit on what you're doing? You mentioned, 35% increase in your field force. What are you doing to really work with schools, those water facilities, hospitals, like you mentioned?
Yeah, so one of the great things about being the national coordinators, we're really at the center of working with sector risk management agencies. And at the beginning of 2023, I really wanted to focus on developing that connective tissue with other agencies. So in particular, focus on water facilities with EPA, focus on hospitals with HHS, focus on schools with ED. And so we work together to do probably over 1,000 engagements now across the country, working with these target-rich, cyber-poor entities, frankly, the ones who have been the victim of the scourge of ransomware. And we've really been able to help them improve their security and resilience by putting very basic things in place. These no-cost services that we provide, whether that's vulnerability scanning, whether we're doing assessments for cyber resilience, whether it's advising them on implementing